In the quiet city of Brookville, life usually moved at its usual predictable pace. People knew each other's faces, the streets were familiar, and the local courthouse was a place where order and routine mattered more than drama. But in 1996, a shadow fell over this calm town, a shadow that would not lift for years. It began with the disappearance of one man, an attorney who had built a reputation for honesty, courage, and an unshakable sense of justice. He was not the type of person who sought the spotlight, but his work naturally drew attention. He had taken on cases that others were afraid to touch, cases that involved powerful people and dangerous secrets. People trusted him, not just because he was skilled at the law, but because he had a sense of fairness that could not be bought. Colleagues often described him as someone who would rather risk his career than compromise his values. That quality had earned him admiration, but also, unknowingly, enemies. On the morning of his disappearance, he left his modest apartment as he always did, briefcase in hand, dressed neatly in his usual dark suit. His wife kissed him goodbye, unaware that it would be the last time she would see him walk through the door. He promised to be back in the evening, saying he had a long day at the courthouse. There was nothing unusual in his tone, no hint of fear or anxiety, just the calm confidence of a man prepared to face a difficult case. But that day, something went terribly wrong. He never returned. His wife waited, first impatiently, then worried, and by nightfall terrified. She called the courthouse, the police, and his office, but no one had seen him. His car remained in the parking lot, his briefcase was gone, but not much else. There were no signs of struggle, no messages, no clues, just silence. When the authorities arrived, they examined his apartment and office thoroughly. Everything appeared normal. His desk was tidy, his personal items were in place, and his files were untouched. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Friends and colleagues were baffled. How could a man disappear without a trace in a city that was not even very large? The media quickly caught on to the story. Newspapers ran front-page headlines about the missing attorney, speculating endlessly about what could have happened. Theories ranged from foul play to voluntary disappearance. Some journalists suggested that he had been threatened by powerful figures involved in the case he was handling. Others believed he had been taken, perhaps kidnapped to prevent him from revealing damaging evidence. There were even whispers that he had decided to vanish on his own, leaving his life behind to escape some unseen danger. Family and friends were left in torment. His wife refused to accept the idea that he might never return. She organized search parties, spoke to neighbors, and even hired private investigators. She clung to the hope that he was alive somewhere, perhaps trapped, waiting to be found. His colleagues at the law firm were equally concerned. The office seemed haunted by his absence. The energy was different, heavy with worry and fear. People whispered about his courage and about the risks he had taken, wondering if that had led him to this fate. As days turned into weeks, investigators dug deeper. They interviewed everyone he had interacted with in recent weeks. The clerks at the courthouse, opposing lawyers, clients, and even distant acquaintances. Yet every lead seemed to lead nowhere. His disappearance was a puzzle with no edges, a mystery that refused to be solved. There were no ransom notes, no phone calls demanding money, no strange sightings. Just a void where a man who had been known for his presence, his voice, and his actions had once been. The case began to attract attention from outside Brookville. Experts in missing persons and legal investigators offered their theories. Some suggested that he had stumbled upon something bigger than anyone realized. Perhaps there was evidence he had found in the high-profile case he was handling, evidence that threatened people with influence and power. But if that were true, who would have taken him and why? How could someone disappear a man so publicly involved in the law without leaving a trace? Meanwhile, life in Brookville continued, though the shadow of the disappearance lingered. The courthouse felt emptier without his presence. People in the town spoke about him in hushed tones, recalling his dedication and his courage. Students at the local law school mentioned his name in passing, as if invoking him might somehow bring answers. The attorney who had once been a symbol of justice became, ironically, a symbol of mystery. Family members began to cope in different ways. His wife refused to give up, clinging to hope, while his parents, aged with worry, etched deep into their faces. Friends struggled between moving on and remaining in denial. The law firm tried to carry on, but every case reminded them of the man who had disappeared in the prime of his career. There were moments of heartbreak when they would catch a glimpse of someone who resembled him in the streets, only to realize it was someone else. Over time, rumors grew. People claimed to have seen him in distant towns talking to strangers in secret, sometimes even living under a different name. Others suggested darker possibilities, whispering about crime, betrayal, and revenge. But the police had no evidence to support any of these claims. The trail had gone cold and the story slowly faded from the headlines, though it never left the hearts of those who knew him. Yet beneath the surface, something lingered, a feeling that the truth had not yet been revealed. Perhaps there were clues buried somewhere, hidden from view, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Perhaps the attorney's courage had led him to create a plan, a secret trail that only time would uncover. Even in the midst of despair, a small group of people refused to forget. A few determined investigators, his closest friends and his family, continued to search for answers, clinging to the idea that the man they loved and respected was not lost forever. They believed that the story was not over, that the attorney's disappearance was not the final chapter, but merely the beginning of a mystery that would unfold in ways no one could imagine. And so, the city of Brookville held its breath. 7 long years would pass before a discovery by 3 young boys would bring new light to the shadow of this disappearance, uncovering secrets that had lain hidden since that fateful day in 1996. Part 2. The Cold Case, 1996-2003. After the attorney vanished, the city of Brookville struggled to return to normal. The courthouse resumed its routines, the streets continued to bustle, and people went about their daily lives. Yet, beneath the surface, the disappearance left a quiet emptiness. Offices whispered about the case in corners, neighbors speculated endlessly, and families could not stop thinking about the man who had suddenly vanished without a trace. Life moved on, but the mystery remained, haunting everyone who had known him. At the law firm where he had worked, the absence was felt deeply. His office remained untouched for weeks, a silent reminder of the man who had once brought order and justice to every case he handled. His colleagues tried to continue their work, but the energy was gone. Every file they opened, every case they reviewed, seemed to remind them of what had been lost. They spoke softly about him, careful not to disturb the memories, yet unable to ignore the shadow of his absence. Meanwhile, the police continued to investigate, though slowly, and with diminishing leads. Weeks turned into months and months into years. The files on his disappearance grew dusty, and the case began to fade into a cold, unresolved mystery. Officers who had once devoted every moment to finding him began to focus on newer cases, while family members never gave up hope. His wife, in particular, refused to accept that he was gone. She held on to every rumor, every lead, and every unexplained clue, no matter how small. Rumors circulated around Brookville, as they do in small towns when someone disappears. Some people claimed to have seen the attorney in distant cities, walking down quiet streets, speaking with strangers, or working under a different name. Others whispered darker stories, that he had stumbled upon something dangerous, something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. These rumors never reached confirmation, but they kept the story alive in the minds of those who remembered him. In the meantime, the high-profile case he had been handling before his disappearance remained unresolved. The courthouse files were left in limbo, documents piled high and evidence stored without anyone to guide it. People speculated that the attorney had uncovered something in the case that made him a target, something so threatening that his disappearance was not an accident. Others wondered if he had simply vanished to protect himself, to disappear from the dangers he had uncovered. No one knew for sure. Years passed slowly. The city adjusted to his absence, but a quiet unease lingered. Neighbors would still mention his name when someone asked about the past. Children grew up hearing stories about the brave attorney who had vanished, and journalists occasionally revisited the case, searching for new angles. His story had become part of the fabric of Brookville, a tale that people whispered about when they wanted to remember courage, mystery, and the unknown. During these years, his family continued their search in secret. His wife often visited abandoned buildings, parks, and forgotten corners of the city, hoping to find even the smallest hint of his presence. His parents wrote letters to him that they never mailed, imagining that somehow he would read them wherever he was. Friends organized small groups to search areas the police could not cover, following every lead no matter how faint. Their devotion kept the story alive, even as time passed and the world around them seemed to forget. The police periodically reopened the case when new tips appeared. A stranger might call claiming to have seen him, or a new piece of evidence might surface in a completely unexpected place. Each time, hope would flare, only to be extinguished when investigations revealed nothing conclusive. The case file grew thick with notes, photographs, and interviews, yet the truth remained stubbornly out of reach. It became a textbook example of a cold case, one that baffled everyone involved. Meanwhile, the community began to develop its own theories. People speculated about whether he had been silenced because of corruption, whether he had been taken by criminals who feared exposure, or whether he had left voluntarily to protect someone else. Theories grew wilder with each retelling, but all shared one common thread. The attorney's disappearance had changed the city. No matter how much time passed, the people of Brookville knew that something extraordinary had happened, something beyond their understanding. Amidst all of this, the city itself seemed to carry a memory of him. Courthouse hallways echoed with his imagined footsteps. Office chairs seemed to wait for him, and even the streets where he had walked appeared to hold a quiet reverence. Children who played in those streets would sometimes pretend to be detectives, imagining themselves following the trail he might have left behind. The story of the attorney became more than a mystery. It became a part of local folklore, a story passed down to each new generation. It was during these years that the first real hint of change began to emerge. It started quietly, almost unnoticed. People began to speak of abandoned places, buildings that had long been empty, and lands that no one seemed to visit anymore. Some said that strange things happened in these places, objects left behind or signs of someone having been there recently. No one paid much attention at first, thinking it was merely coincidence. But for those who remembered the attorney, it sparked curiosity and, more importantly, hope. The high-profile case he had been handling before his disappearance remained a silent enigma. Files that were once meticulously organized now sat untouched, gathering dust in storage rooms. Evidence, including documents, letters, and photographs, had never been fully reviewed. Lawyers, investigators, and even journalists sometimes returned to the case, drawn by a sense of unfinished business. They wondered whether the attorney had left a trail, a clue hidden somewhere that could one day solve the mystery of his disappearance. As the years went by, the city itself changed. New buildings replaced old ones, streets were repaved, and families moved in and out. Yet the story of the attorney persisted, like a quiet thread woven into the life of Brookville. Every time someone mentioned him, the memory sparked questions, conversations, and sometimes new leads. People who had grown up hearing the story felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if they were waiting for something to happen, waiting for the mystery to unfold in ways no one could predict. And then, 7 years after his disappearance, a group of 3 young boys exploring the outskirts of the city would stumble upon something that had been hidden for all this time, something that would finally breathe life into the cold case, something that would uncover secrets long buried, and something that would change everything the city thought it knew. For years, the attorney's absence had been a shadow over Brookville. His courage, dedication, and mysterious disappearance had left a mark on everyone who knew him. People had tried to move on, to forget, but the city itself seemed to refuse. Something important had been left behind, and the world had simply not been ready to find it. The story of those 7 long years is a story of hope, of searching, and of waiting for the right moment. It is a story of ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances, of families who refused to give up, and of a mystery that refused to die. The quiet anticipation in Brookville was not just about finding the attorney. It was about uncovering the truth, about justice, and about finally bringing closure to a story that had haunted the city for too long. And as the city slept quietly under the night sky, with its streets and buildings bathed in silver moonlight, no one could have known that the next chapter of the story would be written by 3 young boys who had no idea what they were about to discover. The summer of 2003 was unusually warm in Brookville. The streets buzzed with the laughter of children, and the parks were filled with families enjoying long, sunlit days. Among the neighborhood's 3 boys, curious, adventurous, and full of energy, spent most of their time exploring the outskirts of the city. They were inseparable friends, always in search of secret places, hidden corners, or anything that might spark their imagination. Little did they know that their curiosity was about to change the course of history in Brookville. The boys had heard stories about abandoned houses, overgrown fields, and hidden paths from older kids in the neighborhood. Some of these places were said to be haunted, while others were simply forgotten by time. One afternoon, armed with nothing but backpacks, flashlights, and a sense of adventure, they decided to explore a large, abandoned property on the edge of town. This property had been empty for years, a house slowly crumbling under the weight of neglect, surrounded by thick grass and tangled vines. As they approached, they could feel the weight of the silence. No birds chirped here, no breeze rustled through the grass. Even the air seemed heavier. One boy pointed at the house, jokingly saying, "Maybe the ghost of the missing attorney lives here." The other two laughed, though a shiver ran down their spines. The legend of the attorney's disappearance had been told in hushed tones for years, and while they had grown up hearing the story, they never imagined they would come close to it, or that it might lead them to something real. Inside the house, dust hung in the air, and sunlight streamed through broken windows, casting strange patterns on the wooden floors. Every step the boys took made the boards creak beneath their feet. They explored cautiously, poking their heads into empty rooms, looking at the cracked walls and noticing remnants of furniture that had once been used and loved. It felt like stepping back in time, a place frozen since the day it had been abandoned. As they wandered into the backyard, overgrown with weeds and wildflowers, one of the boys noticed something unusual near the edge of the property. Partially buried under fallen leaves and dirt was a small metal box. Its surface was rusty, but it had a latch that seemed surprisingly intact. Curiosity immediately overtook caution. One of the boys knelt and brushed away the leaves, revealing that the box was heavier than it looked. The other boys gathered around, their eyes wide with excitement. "Do you think it's treasure?" one of them asked, barely containing his excitement. "Only one way to find out," said another, struggling with the latch. Finally, with a small click, the box opened. Inside, they found a collection of items that seemed ordinary at first: papers, photographs, and a small leather-bound notebook. But as they looked closer, they realized these items were extraordinary. The papers were official documents, some stamped with the courthouse seal, others marked with handwritten notes in a careful, precise hand. Photographs showed places and people they didn't recognize, but there was something about them that hinted at secrets waiting to be uncovered. The notebook caught the boys' attention the most. Its pages were filled with meticulous notes, legal terms, and sketches of buildings and streets. Even though they did not understand everything, they sensed that this belonged to someone important. As they flipped through the pages, a sense of awe and fear swept over them. This was not just a forgotten box in an abandoned house, it was evidence, a clue to a mystery that had remained unsolved for 7 years. The boys exchanged nervous glances. "We have to tell someone," said the one holding the notebook. "Not yet," said another, hesitating. What if it's dangerous? What if the people who took the attorney are still out there?" They debated for a few minutes, the tension building. Finally, they agreed to take the items home, intending to show a trusted adult first thing in the morning. Each boy carefully packed the papers, photographs, and notebook into his backpack, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on their young shoulders. They didn't fully understand what they had found, but they knew it was important. Somehow, instinct told them that this discovery could finally answer the questions that had haunted Brookville for years. That night, the boys could hardly sleep. Their minds raced with possibilities. Had they found proof of the attorney's disappearance? Were these documents connected to the high-profile case he had been handling? Could they finally uncover the truth that no one else had been able to find? The questions tumbled through their thoughts, mixing excitement with fear. They understood that they were part of something much larger than themselves, a real-life mystery waiting to be solved. The next morning, they decided to show the discovery to a local teacher, someone they trusted. The teacher was initially shocked when they opened their backpacks and revealed the documents and notebook. The pages, photographs, and notes were unlike anything the teacher had ever seen. After carefully examining the items, it became clear that the materials were authentic and connected to the missing attorney. Word began to spread quickly. Authorities were contacted, and investigators arrived to secure the items. For the first time in 7 years, the mystery was active again. The evidence found by the boys offered clues that had been hidden from the world. Clues that could finally explain what had happened to the attorney. As investigators reviewed the materials, they noticed patterns. Some of the documents suggested that the attorney had been onto something dangerous before he disappeared. The photographs captured faces and locations that were previously unknown. The notebook contained notes that hinted at threats, hidden dangers, and legal evidence that could shake the foundations of power in Brookville. Every page revealed more about the attorney's life in the days before he vanished, and about the high-profile case that may have put him in danger. The boys watched as adults and authorities carefully examined their find. They felt a mixture of pride and anxiety, realizing that their curiosity had brought them to the center of a story far bigger than they could have imagined. They had uncovered a piece of history, a secret that had remained hidden for years, and they had the power to bring answers to people who had been waiting for so long. As the investigation unfolded, the town buzzed with excitement and fear. Reporters covered the story, families revisited the old rumors, and those connected to the attorney's case grew tense. The items the boys had found were more than just papers and photographs. They were keys to understanding a mystery that had puzzled Brookville for years. Authorities followed every lead provided by the documents. They retraced the attorney's steps, re-examined the high-profile case, and interviewed people mentioned in the notes and photographs. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together. The evidence suggested that the attorney had uncovered something dangerous, something that powerful individuals wanted to keep hidden. But the discovery by the boys brought that hidden truth into the light, giving investigators hope that the mystery could finally be solved. Meanwhile, the three boys became local heroes in their own quiet way. People in the community admired their courage and curiosity. They had approached an abandoned house out of pure adventure, but their find had a profound impact on the town. They had reminded everyone that even ordinary people, especially ordinary children, could play a role in uncovering extraordinary truths. The days following the discovery were tense. Investigators worked tirelessly, combing through every document and photograph. Journalists covered every new detail, and the public waited anxiously for updates. The attorney, who had been missing for 7 long years, was now at the center of attention again, not in person, but through the trail he had left behind. His courage, intellect, and dedication were revealed through the notes, photographs, and documents the boys had uncovered. As the investigation deepened, the town realized something profound. The attorney had not disappeared without purpose. He had left a trail, perhaps unconsciously, to ensure that the truth could one day come to light. And now, 7 years later, 3 young boys had followed that trail without even knowing its significance. Their discovery had reignited hope and curiosity in Brookville, reminding everyone that some mysteries are never truly gone. They are merely waiting for the right moment to be found. The discovery by the 3 boys marked the beginning of a new chapter in the story. It was a turning point, a moment when the cold case that had haunted the city for years finally had a chance to be solved. The evidence they found was the spark that would lead investigators closer to the truth, and eventually, to the fate of the missing attorney. The boys had no idea at the time how important their discovery was. They only knew that they had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that made their summer adventure unforgettable. Little did they know that their curiosity and courage would not only solve a long-standing mystery, but also change the lives of everyone connected to the case. And so, with the discovery of the hidden box, the papers, and the notebook, the quiet city of Brookville was about to witness the unraveling of a story that had remained hidden for 7 years. A story of courage, danger, and secrets long buried, a story that would test the limits of truth, justice, and human determination. After the discovery by the 3 boys, Brookville was abuzz with a renewed sense of curiosity and tension. The quiet city streets, which had long carried the weight of the attorney's mysterious disappearance, suddenly felt alive with speculation. People whispered in stores, parks, and schools, all eager to know more about the documents, photographs, and notebook that had been hidden for 7 years. Authorities, investigators, and journalists immediately converged on the small town, eager to examine the evidence and uncover the story behind the missing attorney. The boys' discovery had done more than just spark public interest. It had given law enforcement a direction they had lacked for years. The small metal box contained materials that provided new clues about the attorney's last known movements and the high-profile case he had been handling. Investigators pored over every page, every photograph, and every note in the notebook, slowly beginning to piece together a sequence of events that had long been obscured. One of the first realizations was that the attorney had not disappeared by accident. His notes suggested he had anticipated danger. In his meticulous handwriting, investigators found references to meetings, phone calls, and observations that hinted at people who wanted to silence him. The notebook contained names, some familiar to local authorities, others unfamiliar but linked to powerful networks. It also contained sketches of buildings and streets, indicating locations he had visited frequently, perhaps places he considered safe or secret. Investigators were struck by the level of detail. This was a man who had carefully recorded everything he found suspicious, everything that might have threatened him or others. It became clear that he had been onto something much bigger than anyone had initially realized. The attorney's disappearance was no random event. It was connected to the very case he had been handling before vanishing. The documents in the box further supported this theory. Official letters, memos, and legal filings suggested corruption and criminal activity involving influential figures. Some papers were coded or marked in ways that indicated the attorney had been carefully tracking sensitive information. Each discovery added weight to the idea that his disappearance was intentional, the result of forces that wanted to ensure he could not reveal the truth. As the investigation progressed, authorities began retracing the attorney's steps from 7 years prior. Using addresses and locations noted in his documents, they visited buildings, spoke to witnesses, and reviewed old court files. They discovered that some of the people he had been dealing with had changed locations or left the area, but others were still present, holding positions of influence. The realization that the danger might still exist made the investigation tense and delicate. Investigators had to be cautious, knowing that revealing too much too soon could alert individuals who wanted the truth hidden. The photographs the boys had found were equally important. Some showed meetings between individuals connected to the high-profile case, while others captured locations that had previously been overlooked. Investigators matched these images to their existing knowledge, piecing together connections that had been invisible for years. It became clear that the attorney had been close to uncovering evidence that could have serious consequences for those involved. Authorities also began to understand the attorney's strategy. The notes suggested that he had anticipated the possibility of being taken or threatened. There were references to hidden documents, coded messages, and secret locations, as if he had prepared a trail that could lead to the truth even if he were no longer able to speak for himself. The discovery by the 3 boys had activated this trail, revealing the careful planning he had undertaken long before his disappearance. Meanwhile, the public followed every update with fascination. Local news outlets covered the story extensively, interviewing investigators and experts. People were eager to learn what the documents revealed, what the photographs showed, and whether the attorney was still alive. The story became a sensation, not because of violence or scandal, but because it combined mystery, courage, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The boys, who had initially stumbled upon the evidence out of curiosity, became minor celebrities in their own right. They were interviewed by reporters, praised by community leaders, and admired by peers. Yet they remained humble, understanding only partially the significance of what they had found. Their role was crucial, but they were only the beginning of a larger story that investigators were now piecing together. As the investigation deepened, authorities uncovered more connections between the attorney and the high-profile case. They discovered correspondence indicating that he had received threats, subtle at first but increasingly serious as the case progressed. Witness statements suggested that he had been followed, monitored, and perhaps even targeted by individuals who wanted the case to fail. The evidence painted a picture of a man under constant pressure, someone who understood the risks but refused to back down. Investigators also began to reconstruct the attorney's final days. They discovered that he had been meeting with informants, collecting sensitive information and documenting everything meticulously. Each new piece of evidence confirmed that he had been close to exposing wrongdoing, which explained why his disappearance had occurred at precisely that moment. The realization brought a mix of sadness and admiration. Sadness for the danger he had faced, and admiration for the courage he had shown in continuing to pursue justice. The investigation was not without danger. Authorities had to proceed carefully, knowing that some individuals connected to the case were still active and influential. Every phone call, every visit, and every public statement had to be considered carefully to avoid tipping off those who might react aggressively. The delicate balance of pursuing the truth while ensuring safety made the investigation tense, but also highlighted the importance of the attorney's foresight. As days turned into weeks, the trail became clearer. Investigators were able to match handwriting in the notebook to the attorney's known writing, confirm the authenticity of the documents, and link photographs to locations and individuals involved in the case. It was a painstaking process requiring patience, attention to detail, and a careful approach to ensure that nothing was overlooked. Through it all, the memory of the attorney's dedication remained central. Colleagues spoke of his integrity, friends recalled his meticulous attention to detail, and family members shared stories of his unyielding commitment to justice. Each testimony reinforced the growing understanding that his disappearance had been tied to his courage, and that the evidence left behind was a reflection of his intelligence and determination. The city of Brookville, meanwhile, watched as the story unfolded. People who had once dismissed the attorney's disappearance as an unsolvable mystery now saw a path to answers. Communities that had feared the unknown began to feel a sense of hope. The discovery by the three boys had not only reignited the investigation, it had also inspired the city to believe that justice, though delayed, was still possible. In the weeks following the discovery, investigators were able to link some of the new evidence to unresolved questions about the high-profile case. It became clear that the attorney had uncovered illegal activities that involved powerful individuals, including corruption, fraud, and manipulation of legal systems. While some details remained hidden for safety reasons, the overall picture suggested that the attorney had been a threat to those who wanted to remain untouchable. The unraveling of the truth also revealed the attorney's ingenuity. His careful documentation, coded messages, and hidden clues showed that he had anticipated possible threats and had left behind a path for the truth to emerge even if he were no longer present. The three boys, in their innocent curiosity, had unwittingly followed this path, activating a chain of events that would ultimately bring clarity to a case that had remained unsolved for years. The attorney's family, long haunted by uncertainty, finally began to feel a sense of relief. While the full truth was not yet known, the discovery and ongoing investigation provided tangible evidence that he had not simply vanished into nothingness. His courage, planning, and foresight had created a trail that would ensure that justice could be pursued, even years after his disappearance. As Part 4 of the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the attorney's disappearance was not the end, but a pivotal moment in a larger narrative. The documents, photographs, and notebook left behind were more than just evidence. They were a testament to his dedication, his bravery, and his unwavering commitment to justice. The investigation, reignited by three young boys, was now on the verge of uncovering secrets that had been buried for 7 long years. Brookville, a city that had once felt the shadow of fear and uncertainty, was now filled with anticipation. Investigators were following a trail carefully laid out by the missing attorney, revealing connections and truths that had long been hidden. Every document, every photograph, and every note brought them closer to understanding what had happened and why the attorney had vanished at the height of a high-profile case. The city, the investigators, and the three boys were all part of a story that was finally coming together. A story of courage, mystery, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The unraveling of the truth was not just the discovery of the hidden box by the three boys had changed everything in Brookville. For 7 long years, the city had been haunted by the mystery of the missing attorney, but now the case was alive again. Investigators were finally following a clear trail, tracing the evidence left behind in the documents, photographs, and notebook. Every day brought new revelations, slowly lifting the veil of secrecy that had covered the attorney's disappearance for so long. Authorities worked tirelessly to piece together the attorney's final days. They reconstructed his movements, visited locations mentioned in his notes, and interviewed people connected to the high-profile case he had been handling. Each piece of evidence revealed a man of courage and intelligence, someone who had risked everything to uncover the truth. It became clear that the attorney had been threatened, followed, and perhaps even targeted by powerful individuals who wanted to hide their wrongdoing. But he had not disappeared without a plan. The documents and notes left behind by the attorney suggested that he had anticipated the possibility of being taken or harmed. He had carefully recorded names, locations, and details of meetings, creating a trail that would allow the truth to emerge even if he could not speak for himself. Investigators realized that the attorney had been meticulous in his work, leaving no detail to chance. The discovery by the boys had activated this hidden trail, allowing the authorities to follow his carefully laid plan. Through their investigation, authorities learned that the attorney had been involved in exposing corruption that reached the highest levels of the city's power structure. The high-profile case he had been handling involved criminal activity, fraud, and manipulation of the legal system by influential people. The attorney had gathered evidence that threatened to expose these individuals, making him a target. His disappearance, while mysterious, was directly linked to the danger he faced from those he was investigating. As investigators delved deeper, they began to uncover the attorney's fate. Though he had been missing for 7 years, the trail suggested that he had been forcibly taken shortly before his disappearance. Evidence indicated that he had been held in secrecy, but not forgotten. Some documents hinted that he had been used as leverage or silenced temporarily, while others suggested that he had been trying to communicate secretly with trusted allies. It was a tense and delicate revelation, one that made the city realize the risks he had taken for the sake of justice. The photographs found by the boys provided critical clues. Some showed the attorney meeting with informants, while others documented locations that investigators had not previously considered. By comparing these images to maps, witness accounts, and old files, authorities began to connect the dots. Each photograph confirmed that the attorney had been methodical in his work, carefully documenting the people and places involved in his investigation. His attention to detail had created a roadmap that could now lead investigators to answers. The notebook proved invaluable. Its pages contained coded notes, sketches, and observations that revealed the attorney's thought process. Investigators discovered references to secret meetings, hidden documents, and potential threats. It became clear that he had been aware of the dangers surrounding his case, yet he had continued his work, determined to uncover the truth. The notebook showed a man who valued justice above personal safety, someone willing to risk everything for the sake of what was right. As the investigation unfolded, the city of Brookville held its collective breath. Families, friends, and neighbors followed the story closely, eager to learn what had happened to the attorney. The discovery by the boys had not only reignited hope for the family, but had also reminded the community of the importance of courage and integrity. People admired the attorney's dedication and were inspired by the fact that even after 7 years, his efforts were beginning to bear fruit. Authorities were finally able to confirm some of the most critical details. The attorney had been taken because of the evidence he had collected, and the people responsible had wanted to ensure that he could not reveal it. However, his careful planning, documentation, and foresight had allowed a trail to survive, hidden from those who sought to erase it. The items discovered by the boys provided the key to unlocking this trail, leading investigators closer to the truth than ever before. The process of unraveling the case was slow and meticulous. Investigators had to be cautious, knowing that some individuals connected to the high-profile case were still alive and could react aggressively. Every interview, every search, and every public statement was carefully considered to avoid alerting anyone who might wish to interfere. The stakes were high and the tension in the city was palpable. Despite the danger, the investigation made steady progress. Witnesses who had previously been too afraid to speak now came forward, encouraged by the renewed focus on the case. Former colleagues and friends of the attorney provided additional information, filling in gaps and confirming details found in the documents and notebook. Each piece of testimony added clarity, helping investigators understand the full scope of the situation and the attorney's final days before his disappearance. As the pieces came together, the city began to see the magnitude of the attorney's work. He had uncovered evidence of corruption, fraud, and criminal activity that extended far beyond what anyone had imagined. The high-profile case he had been handling was more complex and dangerous than anyone had realized, and his disappearance was directly connected to the threat he posed to those involved. The community's respect for him grew, and his legacy of courage and integrity became more apparent. The family of the attorney, after years of uncertainty, finally received answers that provided a measure of closure. While the details were sometimes painful, the knowledge that he had acted with bravery and purpose offered comfort. They learned that he had fought to protect the truth, leaving behind a trail that would eventually reveal the full story. The discovery by the boys had been the turning point, allowing the family to understand the depth of his dedication and the risks he had faced. For the three boys, the experience was life-changing. Their curiosity and courage had brought them into the center of a story that had captivated the city for years. They had uncovered evidence that not only helped solve a long-standing mystery, but also highlighted the importance of persistence, honesty, and bravery. Their discovery reminded the community that ordinary people, even children, could make a difference in uncovering the truth. As the investigation reached its final stages, authorities were able to piece together the attorney's last moments. He had been aware of the danger he faced and had taken steps to ensure that the truth could be discovered, even if he were unable to speak for himself. The evidence left behind, combined with the discovery by the boys, provided a clear understanding of the events that had led to his disappearance. It was a story of courage, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The high-profile case that had once seemed unsolvable was finally moving toward resolution. Evidence collected by the attorney, now revealed, allowed authorities to identify those responsible for illegal activities. Some were brought to justice, while others faced investigations that would hold them accountable for their actions. The city of Brookville, once haunted by fear and uncertainty, began to see the results of years of perseverance and dedication. The story of the missing attorney became a symbol of courage for the entire city. People admired his dedication to justice, his careful planning, and his willingness to face danger for the greater good. The discovery by the three boys reminded everyone that even in the darkest situations, hope could survive. Their actions had reignited an investigation that had been dormant for 7 years, proving that truth, perseverance, and courage could overcome obstacles, even those created by powerful and dangerous individuals. In the end, Brookville learned that the attorney's disappearance had been tragic but purposeful. He had risked everything to expose the truth, and his careful documentation had ensured that justice could eventually be pursued. The discovery by the three boys had been the key to unlocking this hidden story, showing that courage, curiosity, and persistence could change the course of events even after many years. Families in the community, inspired by the story, reflected on the importance of integrity and bravery. They shared the tale with their children, teaching lessons about courage, truth, and the power of persistence. The story of the attorney, once a source of fear and mystery, had become a source of hope and inspiration for generations to come. As the city slowly returned to normal, the impact of the discovery remained. Investigators continued to follow leads, journalists continued to document the story, and the public continued to be fascinated by the attorney's courage. The three boys, now quietly celebrated, carried with them a sense of accomplishment and the knowledge that their curiosity had helped bring justice closer to reality. Ultimately, the story of the missing attorney was more than just a mystery. It was a story of courage, dedication, and the relentless pursuit of truth. It was a story about ordinary people stepping up in extraordinary circumstances, about the power of curiosity and bravery, and about the enduring importance of justice. And while some questions might never be fully answered, the city of Bro